Hi, I'm Brad Mackay and I'm a GP. Coronavirus is dangerous. You can spread the virus even when you don't have symptoms, which means you're putting yourself and your loved ones at risk if you leave the house. Please stay at home.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode 599 for the 5th of April 2020. Richard Saunders coming to you from a very quiet, oh my goodness, a very quiet Sydney, Australia. And with every passing day, the streets of Sydney certainly resemble more and more some B-grade Hollywood movie. Which is a good thing, because at the moment, the message is loud and clear: stay at home. Keep a social distance, which is contrary to some of the advice coming out of the crazy crowd at the moment. Later on in the show, we'll be talking about bad advice, very bad advice coming out from the alt-med community, the anti-vaxxers, the conspiracy theorists, and so on, including advice to make yourself a pest in hospitals or do not social distance, things like that. You will not believe what they're saying. That's later on in the show. But we're going to start this week's show with an interview I did a couple of days ago with Abhijit Chanda. Abhijit does the Rationable podcast from New Delhi in India. Now, many, many years ago, I had the pleasure of visiting India. I went to the Rationalist conference in New Delhi, and I've always admired the work that the skeptics and the rationalists do in India. Very hard job indeed, fighting the gurus and the magicians pretending to have special magical psychic powers. Find out about the Rationable podcast with my interview with Abhijit. After that, as mentioned before, we're going to look into the crazy claims made by the woo crowd, the anti-vax gang, and so on during this international emergency. Then it's Michelle Bijkersma with Logical Fallacies. This week, Michelle looks at begging the question. Following that, it's a voice we have not heard on the Skeptic Zone for some time. It's Dr. Rachie. Maynard interviews Dr. Rachie, who is currently doing vital medical research in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Dr. Rachie, of course, was one of the original team on the Skeptic Zone podcast. Then to round off a show, it's a message from Susan Gerbic from Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. What's her life like now in Salinas, California during this strange time? Please stay tuned at the end of the show for more announcements from me. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, mix up some eggs, flour, milk, a bit of salt, maybe a touch of sugar, and make some pancakes. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. And joining me now on the line, all the way from New Delhi in India, it's Abhijit Chanda.
Hi, how are you, Richard?
Actually, I'm doing okay, despite the world going crazy at the moment. I'm doing reasonably well, because I know many people around the world aren't doing so well, but we'll get to that in a moment. But to start off with, for a bit of background, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started in podcasting?
Well, actually, I've spent most of my life being just about as gullible as anyone, probably more gullible than most people. And I never really thought about things like religion or evolution or, homeopathy or Ayurveda and stuff like that, because most of the things, like, at least my family is on the right side when it comes to science and evolution and stuff like that. But I've always been brought up with a lot of homeopathy and Ayurveda for most of my life, and we've already taken it for granted that it works. So I never really questioned it until a friend of mine who was, kind of said that he didn't believe in evolution. And that kind of shook me up, because even though I presumed that science was on the right side of that argument, and he was speaking more from a religious standpoint, it kind of made me question my own beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of avalanched from there, where I was questioning that. Then I questioned a whole lot of other beliefs, because I was in the process of studying writing, and I was trying to write a science fiction novel. And I was thinking that I could make it about, ancient aliens or ancient technology or something like that. And I found out all of that stuff was pretty much made up as well. And I'd always assumed that maybe, because of the Ramayana, like when we were kids, we used to watch these TV shows of Ramayana and Mahabharata on our national TV broadcast thing, which is called Doordarshan. And they had all sorts of fancy things, like they were shooting arrows that would explode, and they had, flying chariots and all sorts of magical things. And so it's a normal Indian thing to assume that those were precursors to current technology, and that we lost it along the way, that the flying chariots were actually planes and the exploding arrows were actually missiles. So I never really taken it too seriously, but I'd always assumed maybe there's something to it, but never really thought about it.
It reminds me very much of Ancient Aliens.
Exactly. So I discovered these things later on, but then when I started writing this and I started researching, because I wanted it to be a scientifically rigorous science fiction novel, all the science is right, but then you take it one step further, like Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov used to do.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to do that. And then I found out that all that stuff was hokum, and that, who was that guy who wrote Chariot of the Gods?
Eric von Daniken.
I thought, my goodness, like this guy is a complete, well, I don't want to call him names.
But let's just say he has a vivid imagination.
Exactly. So Brian Dunning from Skeptoid had made an excellent episode about this as well very recently. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been thinking. So since that, all these events kind of happened one after another, and they all kind of threw me down this thing like, oh my God, I was wrong about so many things. And I had to question everything I was thinking. And then in the process of learning more about evolution and ancient aliens and everything, and I started hitting more and more stuff about alternative medicine, especially homeopathy.
Wow.
And I think I watched a Richard Dawkins clip from one of his movies, from one of his documentaries about homeopathy, where he explained what homeopathy was, and I was like, really? This again? Do I have to rethink this as well? I've been taking homeopathy since I was a kid. It never seemed to work on me, but everybody in my family swears by it. So I always thought there was something to it. And so that was a huge turning point for me. And then I started listening to Skeptoid podcasts. I started listening to the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and several other podcasts. Yours I've only discovered recently, unfortunately, so I have a lot of catching up to do.
Oh, yes, you have a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah. So that was when I realized that there was this whole world and a way of thinking called skepticism, which I had never really known about before. And a decade down the line, and this was back in 2009, 2010, so a decade down the line, and I've been every single day just absorbing ideas about critical thinking, understanding the things and testing my beliefs that I have held my whole life. And so eventually I kind of came to think that, I want to give something back. I want to share what I've learned, and I want to help people be less gullible and less prone to be conned by not only alt-med practitioners, but, these gurus and, pundits who seem to think that they know everything about everything. So that's why I started Rationable. That's where I started off from, and I hope that it goes somewhere and that more and more people kind of catch on to it. So that's my way of making the world a better place.
Yes, I'm looking at the website at the moment. It's called Be Rationable. Did you make up that word, rationable?
Yeah, I did actually. Because I wanted to. I was trying to think of things and what to name it, and I thought, well, a lot of the Indian atheists cum skeptics kind of call themselves rationalists, and so I thought maybe that's a nice way to go down without actually taking, because a lot of people think skepticism is just cynicism, and that there's also a lot of preconceived notions about atheists, and I'm not much of an atheist activist because religion has never been too big a deal in my life, fortunately. So I don't really have a bone to pick with them, though some things do annoy me every now and then. But so I wanted it to be more on the skeptical side of things and just reasonable and rational, because one of the central things that I believe in is that when we are having conversations about, fake news, misinformation, alt-med, or weird beliefs in general, people tend to get very aggravated. And they insult people and call them stupid or dumb or stuff like that. And I find that never really gets you anywhere. That doesn't change minds. It doesn't influence people in any way. It just makes you look like a dick. Can I say that on your podcast? I don't know.
Yes, I know what you mean, but sometimes there's the temptation, when you see something outrageous or particularly bad. And that brings us on to it's the number one story in the world at the moment.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about the situation there in India. Now, here in Australia, we have an outfit called Homeopathy Plus. They won the Bent Spoon from Australian skeptics some years ago. They're the sort of people who think that homeopathy can treat or cure anything, and I do mean anything, from vaccine-preventable diseases to, I think, radiation, bizarrely enough. Now, they've been posting in the last week or so news items that say something like the rate of COVID-19 infections around the world is skyrocketing, but in India, it's so much less. Could that be because the Indian government has advised people to take homeopathy? Now, you're there on the spot. What's your take on all that?
Well, I think we are just at the very beginning of the crisis. We've just stepped into it, and the numbers are growing as exponentially as has any other country. So we haven't really, I don't think we've really felt the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic now yet. So, but we are going to be seeing a lot more of it. And in fact, the Ministry of Ayush, which promoted the Arsenicum album 30 preparation to prevent, as a prophylactic, to prevent getting infected, that has actually become quite popular. I've actually been to chemists, pharmacies, where I've seen people asking for it, where it's been advertised that they have this product, and people are taking it. But of course, we know that homeopathy really doesn't do anything in any way, shape, or form. But the problem is that we have a government ministry, a department of the government, which actively promotes alternative medicine. And not only have they promoted this one preparation, they have also had an entire press release which has come out with many other items which cover Unani, which is a Middle Eastern form of Ayurveda, but essentially the same principles. Siddh, which is the South Indian form of Ayurveda, which is again similar principles, and Ayurveda as a central thing as well. So they've promoted all of these things. They've very cleverly taken the WHO recommendations of washing your hands, social distancing, don't touch your face, and slipped these in between to give them a little bit more of a sheen of credibility.
Isn't that interesting? Because I'm going to be talking about soon a chiropractor here in Australia who's put up a page saying that for coronavirus, wash your hands, keep social distances, all the good advice. And mixed up with that advice on his page, he's saying, and of course, get yourself a chiropractic adjustment.
Yeah, why not? And it's even, I think just recently, just today, I saw yet another press release from the Ministry of Ayush saying, again, similar things, but this time they have covered their asses a little bit by saying that this may probably prevent an infection without specifically naming the infection. And at the bottom, they have put a nice disclaimer saying that this is not this document is not a claim that these treatments will actually cure COVID-19 or treat it in any way. So they've gone through the so-called FDA loophole that the US has that, don't claim any such thing, because they had a lot of pushback, even though it's their promotion of the, through the press releases have been received quite well by the majority of Indians. But there has also been a lot of pushback on social media. Thank goodness. It kind of makes me feel a little bit better that, we're not all falling for it. So it feels much better.
Now, what's this I hear from India? Advice about vitamin C and onions.
Oh, the vitamin C thing has been going around a huge amount because I think the vitamin C thing, vitamin C has been something that our families have been kind of talking about since we were kids, that, you should always have your vitamin C to make sure that you don't get a cold and your immune system stays strong. So that thought process has kind of continued all the way through till now. And we're still seeing it pop up. Now, almost every epidemic that comes out, have your vitamin C, which is great, because vitamin C and vitamin D do provide some sort of protection. Not protection, I would say. It just helps your immune system stay healthy, which is two among the myriad components that make up a healthy immune system. You just need to have a nice balanced diet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, everybody wants that magical cure-all that is going to be that shield against, COVID-19, which of course it isn't. And it's been out there. I think it's on several websites, including I'm not sure if WHO has put it out, but I think there's a vitamin C section up there. Vitamin B is something I've seen being promoted as well, and it's something that's making its rounds around through my family, where people are saying, "Oh, you should have more warm lemon water," which is, fine. Have that. Have plenty of it. Have as much of it as you want. I have nothing against that. It's all a part of a well-balanced diet. And onions, there was this one video which I saw recently, which fortunately is very hard to find, except maybe on TikTok, which a friend of mine sent to me, which has a Sikh lady speaking in Punjabi, saying that if you have chopped onions covered in salt, within 1 hour, you will be tested. Your tests for coronavirus or COVID-19 will come out negative, even if you were positive before that, which is fantastic. If that was true, the world would be saved.
Yes, and we're going to be seeing more and more of this. People who really do believe in their quack form of medicine trying to capitalize on the situation, or maybe I should say, honestly trying to help people in their delusion. They're deluded about the benefits of homeopathy or so on, and they're honestly trying to help people. Now I saw slightly different tact. I saw something online today, and I wonder if you could confirm it, that I was in India some years ago, in the early 2000s, 2003, I think. I went to the Rationalist meeting in New Delhi, and I traveled to the Taj Mahal and did some other things. But I must say, one of my memories is of the terrible air pollution in New Delhi when I was there. But I've seen pictures online lately of clear blue skies over New Delhi.
Yes, it's amazing. I just went out today for one of our grocery hauls, and it's actually, it's astonishing. It kind of hits you, because I've never seen... It's very rare that you get to see Delhi skies this blue. It's still not very clean air. At night, the pollution tends to go up a bit, but it's right now. It's at, according to my watch, it says it's 62. AQI is 62, which is not bad. I think it's what Sydney would be around now as well, when last I checked. and which is, according to some European countries, a bit polluted. But according to Delhi, it's amazing. I mean, we've got the cleanest air I've ever seen. I mean, maybe only in the middle of the monsoons where it rains almost every single day does the pollution come down to this extent. But it's bright, it's sunny, it's beautiful outside. It's got nice, lovely blue sky, which is so rare to see. It's a wonderful thing at a horrible price, unfortunately.
Yes, I know what you're saying. It's amazing for me to think of New Delhi with clear blue skies, because it wasn't so pleasant all those years ago when I was there. But let's get back to your podcast. It's called Be Rationable at berationable.com, and I'll put a link in this week's show notes. And you've got lots of episodes up already. How many episodes do you have?
Up till now, I have about 23 episodes approximately.
23. And they're quite concise, aren't they? Quite compact.
I try to make them as compact as possible. As a blog, because all my podcasts are basically me reading out my articles in a more casual way and kind of inserting a little bit of this and that to make it, make the information a little bit richer and easier to listen to. So as articles, they're decently long. It's about 2,000 words. Each episode is about 15 to 20 minutes long at the most. So I like to keep it nice and quick and informative, but I am planning on, slightly longer form things which won't necessarily have a blog transcript along with it, like interviews and maybe YouTube videos, which I'm planning to come out with this year. So I'd love to share that with everyone when they do come out.
There you are, folks. Listen to Be Rationable. It's a nice podcast to listen to. It's one of the podcasts you should listen to while you're doing your daily exercise, and that's certainly what I do. I load up my device, my iPhone, with lots of skeptical podcasts, and these days including Be Rationable. Well, Abhijit, thank you very much for sparing us some time all the way over there in New Delhi. Stay well.
I certainly will.
But for now, Abhijit Chanda, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard, for having me on.
G'day, this is Dr. Karl Kruszinski, proud to be a skeptic, and you can find out more about me at drkarl.com and get lots of free stuff there as well.
As I mentioned at the top of the show, there are people out there in this wonderful world of ours who are taking this current situation very seriously indeed, well, to their way of thinking. There are people in the anti-vax conspiracy theory crowd who are suspicious, and that's putting it mildly, that this situation is real at all. Believe it or not. Jane Hansen, writing online for the Daily Telegraph, tells us anti-vaccine activist Meryl Dorey has called upon her 13,000 followers to breach new laws to socially isolate and take pictures of hospitals to prove the COVID-19 pandemic is fake. The anti-vax movement worldwide is insistent that COVID-19 is a hoax and that people should not follow government advice. Are you being lied to? If you're out and about in the next couple of days, why don't you take your phones and pop into a local hospital? Ms. Dorey posted this week. Let us know how crowded it is, or is not. Is coronavirus really overwhelming our nation, or is our nation overwhelming us with lies and killing our economy and us? On the Australian Vaccination Risks Network Facebook page, Ms. Dorey also posted a video from American anti-vaxxer Dana Ashley, who claims there is no pandemic, despite about 250,000 cases in the USA and more than 6,000 deaths at the time of writing. And Ms. Dorey's followers have responded to her call. I plan to do just that. My local hospital is looking pretty quiet, and I'm not seeing or hearing ambulances. Where's the pandemic? One follower wrote. Others posted pictures of their local hospitals. John Dwyer, Professor of Medicine and a vocal critic of the AVN, that's the Australian Vaccination Network, or the Australian Vaccination Risks Network, or formerly the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network, and so on, said the advice was dangerous and possibly illegal. "We don't want people going out at all except for essential purposes," Professor Dwyer said. "This advice is not just putting people in danger because they are stupid. The whole purpose of our social distancing is to stop transmission from one person to another. People who ignore it, they are a risk to the whole community. And now we are at our most dangerous phase where we have community spread without contact with travellers. This is a critical time for controlling the epidemic. We all have to follow these instructions that have been proven to work. People who might think they'll accept this advice," that's the advice by Meryl Dorey, "are a danger to others as well as their silly selves." In response, Ms. Dorey said, "I said if they were out and about anyway to pop over and check out whether their local hospital looks crowded. I see no reason why it would be considered illegal for them to pass by the hospital on their way out or back. From everything I have been told, many hospitals have empty or nearly empty car parks. So where are all the COVID-19 sufferers?" As an aside, I seem to remember that Meryl Dorey is originally from New York. And while she can't visit there at the moment, maybe she should and see things for herself firsthand. We read on. Another Byronshire anti-vaxxer, Tom Barnett, a member of the Involuntary Medical Objectors Party, who ran as a candidate in the last federal election in the electorate of Richmond, claimed in a video online, "You cannot catch a virus because it is impossible." Mr. Barnett explains on the video that he was one of those kids who could read and write before school and knew his 1 to 12 times table before other kids even opened a book, and that when he last took an IQ test, he was taken into a separate room and interrogated because they thought he must have cheated. He claims a virus is not transmissible between people, and the only way to catch a virus is to inject it into your bloodstream. Mr. Barnett encourages everyone to ignore guidelines. 1. Do not get a flu shot. Do not get any shot. And 2. Don't stay in your house. You need sunshine, he said. Mr. Barnett claims to have studied 6 years of science, including medicine, but when questioned if he had studied at legitimate institutions, he said, "What legitimizes a university? Or Google for that matter?" He did not respond to other questions. Professor Dwyer also slammed this advice. He is adamant that viruses can't move from one person to another, but bacteria can. The only reason he is worth any mention is that if people were silly enough to believe that, they would disregard what the government is telling us and all these crucial measures, he said. And that story appeared in the Daily Telegraph Online by Jane Hansen. And I'll say that I've seen that video just referred to being shared around amongst some of my Facebook followers who also happen to be of the mindset of psychics and clairvoyants and that sort of stuff. I'm not saying that one necessarily leads to another. I'm not saying that people who think they have psychic special powers are also into conspiracy theories. But I seem to see that, from anecdotal evidence anyway, there is a large crossover. That video, by the way, has since been taken down. Another video that's been taken down was from Julie Wileman. Now, you may remember Julie Wileman. We've spoken about her on the Skeptic Zone before. She received a PhD from the University of Wollongong. But from what we can gather, she is a conspiracy theory-minded person and an anti-vaccination advocate. This is just a very short snippet of what she said on that video, and of course I'm using this under the fair use laws.
Why are they wanting to control the population to this degree when it doesn't make sense for the outbreak of disease that we have in Australia? The risk of infectious diseases has not yet changed in Australia. So these are draconian measures. As I mentioned, quarantining is fine. tracing the cases of their sick contacts, or if someone is sick, tracing their contacts, maybe isolate them. But do not lock down the healthy population under the guise of social distancing for a global pandemic when there is no evidence of that pandemic.
Now, the video, as I've mentioned, that has been taken down, included a lot more advice about ignoring social distancing and conspiracy theory and paranoia and things like that. And as we keep reminding the University of Wollongong, they should be very careful in the future to whom they award a PhD. Certain chiropractors have also come to our attention, and this is from the Coulomb family chiropractic at coulombchiropractic.com.au. What can you do to protect yourself from the coronavirus? And it is a page with generally good advice: regular hand washing, not touching your face, keeping your distance from people, and so on, as per the government's guidelines. It says, do eat lots of fresh fruit and vegetables. Yeah, drink clean water, get adequate sleep, of course, regular light exercise like going for a walk, breathe fresh clean air, get your spine adjusted. Your immune system boosts after a chiropractic adjustment. Take vitamin C, and so on and so on. Avoid sugar. Oh, yeah. So this, I think, this page, this claim is now the subject of a complaint. If you, in Australia especially, if you see online or you pass by a chiropractor while you're out doing your exercise or essential duty, and you see a sign that says something along the lines of chiropractic can boost your immune system and making vague coronavirus mentions or claims, please take a photograph of that. Keep it. Soon I hope to be telling everybody where they can send the screen captures and so on to do with alt-med claims and coronavirus. And thanks to Ken MacLeod for bringing that to my attention. On next week's show, I will be bringing you a story about so-called medical intuitives who make claims about coronavirus and treatment. And this is brought home to us once again. There is nothing so outrageous and crazy that someone won't believe it. And you'll find the appropriate links to some of those stories in this week's show notes.
This is Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. We are a group of concerned citizens dedicated to promoting good science and common sense in our region, the far north coast of New South Wales. This area, famous for its natural beauty and relaxed lifestyle, also has the lowest rates of vaccination in Australia. We are out to change that by challenging the myths and misinformation and by providing good evidence-based information to the community. We'd love for you, no matter where you are in the world, to join our fight. Please visit our webpage at www.nrvs.info. We also have a link there to our Facebook page. Tweet us at NRVaxSupporters, that's VAX, and check us out on Wikipedia by searching for Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Thank you.
Logical fallacies. What are logical fallacies, and why is it important that critical thinkers should know about them? A logical fallacy is an error we can make in reasoning, but it usually crops up when we are discussing or arguing our point of view. Some people might even knowingly use them to try and score cheap points in an argument due to intellectual laziness. They are traps we can fall into, but if we know what to look out for, we can spot them when they occur and stop ourselves from using them. This week we'll look at begging the question.
Also known as circular reasoning, this is when the answer to the question is implied in the wording of the question itself. The premise of the question and the foregone conclusion support each other in a circular way without referring to any external, actual evidence.
We often hear the term "that begs the question" in TV and radio interviews with politicians, for example. What the interviewer really should say is, "that prompts the question," or "that raises the question," as that is what they really mean. When using the term to refer to a logical fallacy, begging the question is not really asking a valid question at all, but it does imply that the premise of the statement needs challenging before a conclusion can be drawn.
Hey, skeptic, how do you explain that my auntie saw a UFO when she was a girl in the 1970s? It was as plain as day.
This example is based on a real question put to a skeptical investigator during an interview. Within the question itself is the answer that the auntie did indeed see a real UFO. Not that the auntie said she thought she saw a UFO, or imagined she saw a UFO, or said she saw something strange in the sky, but did in fact see a real UFO. And remember that in common usage, UFO does not mean unidentified flying object, it means alien spaceship. It can be hard to try and answer this question without pointing out the logical fallacy.
A paranormal investigator was sent to investigate strange noises in an old house. She looked at the owner and said, "Ghosts have been known to make these noises. How long has this house been haunted?"
Here the investigator seems to have made up her mind that whatever the strange noises were, they were the result of ghosts. The question she put to the owner assumes not only that ghosts are real and the house is haunted, but this is the cause of the noises.
I know my favourite alternative medicine works because it comes from nature, and natural is best.
There is no reason to think that just because something comes from nature, that it therefore works and is good for you. There are many deadly poisons to be found in nature. Furthermore, there is nothing to say that natural is better than artificial. It's the dose that determines whether or not something is harmful, helpful, or just inapplicable. Declaring that something works or is good just because it comes from nature is indeed begging the question, and is also an appeal to nature logical fallacy. As we've said, you'll often hear the phrase, "that begs the question," when people really mean "that prompts the question." So just remember that language is evolving all the time. But if you hear someone really begging the question in an argument, you might ask them to rephrase the question. And try not to beg the question yourself, which is all too easy to do when you are sure of your point of view. Knowing a logical fallacy when you hear one, and even knowing its name, is important when arguing your point of view. However, you may come across as arrogant and not get very far if you call it out by name to your opponent when you hear it being used. If your opponent calls you out for using one, it's time to stop and think about how you are making your case. Use your knowledge of logical fallacies wisely, and remember that even if your point of view is right and you know all the pitfalls in arguing your case, it doesn't always mean you'll win on the day. And as skeptics, we must also remember that we too can be wrong at times. I'm Michelle Bijkersma from the Vic Skeptics. Thanks for listening.
Kyle from the Data Skeptic podcast. If you're curious about the way data is changing our world, topics like AI and all this craziness with Facebook and bots and the Twitter storm and how the algorithms that underline that work, and you don't want a technical deep dive, you want it in the vernacular, in a way that people can understand, check us out at Data Skeptic. That's what we try and do. I interview advanced professionals in the field who do this sort of research, and then I get into interesting projects as well. We're a weekly show, and you can find us at dataskeptic.com.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Look, listen up. People of the Skeptic Zone, speak up, listen, be carefully. Put down that Donna Summer CD and listen to your radio podcasting thing now. It's Dr. Rachie live from Michael Jackson's Hole in Wyoming.
Maynard, hello, how are you? Long time no speaky.
Oh, look, it's great to chat to you again because we've got a lot to go. The world has changed, Dr. Rachie.
It has, hasn't it? A lot has happened. A lot of good things and some bad things.
Look, let's establish your credentials. What have you got a degree in and what do you do?
So my PhD is in cell biology and I am a medical researcher working in neurodegeneration. So not really exactly what I started studying, but it's what I'm doing now.
That's right, because you think that aging is caused by hair. Is that it?
Aging is caused by old people, Maynard. Everyone knows that.
Oh, right, of course. I'll write that down. I'll get right onto that. But look, here at Mad Labs, I've been working on possible cures for this coronavirus thing and treatments for it because I've been listening to a lot of press conferences from Donald Trump and I listened to the Alex Jones show. And I've got a couple of ideas here. Can I run them past you?
Okay. Yeah, your sources are really probably very good. So go ahead. I look forward to it.
Rightio. Now, apparently ultraviolet C is very bad for viruses. So I thought if you built a big container that had ultraviolet C in it and you just sat in it, that would kill the coronavirus. A large...
It may, but it also may kill you in the process. So, yeah, you probably end up with no virus, but... Right. You may die too.
So I'm going to put a question mark next to that one then. That's good. Now, also, there's something about the quinine, the natural quinine, which is in tonic, and the swabs you use for your hands got alcohol. So I reckon gin and tonic. Could that cure the coronavirus?
You know what, Maynard, we don't know yet, but I suggest that everyone does a scientific experiment and gets back to you next week on the Skeptic Zone to see how it's working.
Okay, fair enough. That's a very quick result there. Good. Okay, well, that's only two ideas I've had. The other one I've had is by playing Herb Albert very loud out of your Volkswagen car window, people aren't going to come near you and you will... In fact, I have achieved social distances just when I tell people I'm a podcaster. They get away from me.
Right, yeah. I think that would be conducive to social distancing and also maybe Barry Manilow. They play that in some alleyways somewhere in the world, don't they, to keep teenagers away. So you could try that too.
Okay, look, I will give that a go there. And what's been the situation in Wyoming? I imagine, the population density is not as high there anyway.
No, we only have 577,000 people in the whole of the state. So we're one of the lowest populated states in the United States.
Yeah, look, like everyone else in America, have you gone out and bought a gun this week?
Apparently a lot of people have done that. And I have heard from a friend who lives here in town that there's no ammunition left in town. And of all the essential services that have remained open, like the pharmacies and the supermarkets, you can still buy ammunition. That's considered an essential service in Wyoming.
Well, look, as I said, that show Preppers now doesn't look as silly as it used to. Still looks silly.
Many people have been saying that. But there we go.
But I digress. In fact, I'm undressed here. It's a no pants world now, isn't it? At home, you don't have to wear pants to work anymore, do you? Oh, you have to actually go to the office, but don't you?
I have to go in a little bit because we have things that can't be left alone. So I'm growing cells, and I can't just leave them by themselves for 2 weeks. So I go in and feed them and pat them and talk to them. Because there's some stuff I just can't leave for 2 weeks and hope that it's okay when I get back.
So are you the Dustin Hoffman of Wyoming there from that movie? What Contagion? What that movie's going around? Anyone seen a monkey? Is that you? Have you got to go and check on your monkey?
Not Yeah, that's right. I walk around with a Polaroid saying, has anyone seen this monkey?
I love that. We should put
I'm not that.
Yeah,
I'm not that.
Justin Hoffman holding out the Polaroid with lipstick written on the bottom there of the phone number of the CDC. That's the way to do it. I mean, Trump's got it all wrong. He needs a Polaroid and some lipstick.
Yeah. No, it could work. We could try that.
How long is it going to take to bring a vaccine to market? Because even though you might be able to develop one relatively quickly or adapt one quickly that's been worked on, you've got to test it, haven't you?
Yeah, no, I'm gonna start by saying I'm not a vaccine expert, but I do participate in running clinical trials here in the US, and it takes a long time because there's 3 phases of testing before you can go and give it to people as a general product or even try to get it listed. And that process usually takes about 10 years, but in this case, you might be able to speed it up to 2 to 5 years maybe. But then you've got to consider too that about 90% of drugs that go into phase 1 trials, which is the first stage of testing, never make it through to the end. So it's a very slim chance that we'll have a vaccine in a hurry. Luckily, there's about 40 candidates currently being investigated, and some clinical trials have begun. But you can't speed up people's immune response, and that's really the big problem. So you can speed up the discovery process of designing a vaccine, but then putting it into humans and measuring how their immune system responds, that you can't put on fast forward.
So the idea is a lot of people are going to get coronavirus eventually, but the idea is to spread that out as long as time as possible. That's the theory, isn't it?
Well, that's the approach that countries are taking, and the reason for that, as most people probably know now, is that if you spike too soon and you get a huge amount of cases at once, you overwhelm the hospital system, and then people end up dying because, like in Italy, you have to choose who gets a ventilator. Is it this person or that person? So that the idea of that is to spread out the illnesses over a longer period of time so that you take the pressure off the hospital system.
Look, again, Mad Labs here, I thought, I can do some ventilator work. And I looked up what they used before ventilators, and there probably wasn't much. They just used a sort of a pressure mask that you would hand pump. And that probably wasn't even available for the flu in 1918 either.
Oh, wow. I mean, well, that's the other problem too, Maynard, is that, you can manufacture a whole bunch of ventilators. And, of course, in the US now, Trump has told General Motors and I think Ford to start repurposing their manufacturing to make them. But that doesn't mean that you've got the staff to administer them to people and to supervise and keep the patients going. So you can't manufacture ICU nurses and people that have that skill. And so that's going to be, a place where there's a restriction on how many ventilators you can actually deploy because you don't have enough people to look after them.
What's your advice for people? I've been washing my hands raw.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have reported that because, I guess coming from a science background and working in a wet lab, I'm used to washing my hands all the time, and I'm really used to infection control and changing gloves whenever I do anything, not touching door handles if I don't have to. So it's not a big shift for me. The difference I've instigated is I have a Google Home system, one of those little smart speakers, and I've got little connections for that around the house now, and I just tell it to count down 20 seconds for me when I wash my hands so that I know that I'm absolutely washing them for the minimum amount of time. So a little alarm goes off after 20 seconds. I usually keep washing for a bit longer, but that allows me to time it. I know people are singing songs to time the 20 seconds. But, yeah, it's a problem. But, it's a small sacrifice, isn't it, to try to reduce the infection spread that might kill your mum, your grandma and your grandma's friend.
Well, that's the thing. I was just looking at reports on, again, it was on news.com.au. So anyway, but they were saying that one of the highest groups in Australia is women in their 20s that seem to be the most infected.
Really? Yeah.
And I don't know why that was. Were they extra social somewhere? Was there someone they knew who was on a ship? I'm just wondering why that group.
Well, there was a theory that I came across, and I don't know if this has been determined, is that those people were kind of the ones that were socialising with returned travellers, like in the Bondi. So there was a spike in Bondi a few weeks ago or recently where a bunch of backpackers collected on Bondi Beach and then a few of them came down with it. So maybe they're more likely to have travelled overseas or socialised with people that have recently returned from backpacking. But I don't know if there's any evidence for that.
Look, a couple of tips I've got for people is that stop watching the news. or limit it. Like I get up in the morning and I read the news on the phone on a couple of websites. I don't watch it because the images can be disturbing. And I think I kind of know enough at the moment that I can do as much. So I'm not really going to learn a lot more that's important that I need to know immediately.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how it's working in Australia right now, but here in Wyoming, we're getting text messages every time something changes. When they send us a text message in the morning with the case numbers, they update it in the afternoon with the case numbers. When they change health orders, like just today they said you're no longer allowed to gather with 2 people. It's now nobody except people in your house. They'll send you a text message that's got an attachment. So we're kept up to date with what we need to know, but you know, obviously I don't watch Trump and I don't have TV, so that's conducive to me not seeing what he's doing.
Yeah, because it'll only make you throw your pencils on the floor.
Well, yeah. I mean, I obviously I'm on social media, so it's filtered through to me a little bit, but there's no way I could watch any of that stuff 24/7. I'd be poking my eyes out with a stick.
Look, Dr. Rachie, I did send you Tim Ferguson's address to the nation from last Monday. Did that help you feel any more relieved?
Tim Ferguson always makes me feel more relieved, particularly when he mentions Northcote, because I did used to live in Northcote. So I'm, always happy to hear him talk about Northcote in a, you couldn't say flattering way, would you? But he's got a special place in his heart for Northcote.
Well, look, and look, we must. This is a warning to all listeners of the Skeptic Zone. There, with this current virus outbreak, there has been a very serious outbreak I expected to get of bad poetry. A lot of bad poetry out there. People writing things down, which is fine. Write things down, but you don't have to share it with anyone, do you?
No, I mean, you could do it on TikTok. That's the place to be these days, isn't it? And it's only 30 seconds. I don't know. What do the kids do these days, Maynard?
Yep. Okay, rightio there. So, I guess no one. That's the whole thing of making it all this uncertain too. All this drumbeat of bad news all day, and then there's the uncertainty of you just don't know when this is going to finish.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen. You already see people have quarantine fatigue, I guess, where I just saw some footage from Rushcutters Bay in New South Wales where there was 5 cop cars chasing people out of the park and stuff. It's not going to end soon. You can look at the WHO and the CDC to see that it's at least here as we're still going up on the curve. But one day this will be a film. And you can tell your grandkids or your kids that I was there. I was there when that happened.
I was Dustin Hoffman. I was looking for that monkey. And let me tell you, I'm looking all the time out the windows. If I see a monkey, you'll be the first person I ring, Dr. Rachie.
Oh, yes, I can't wait.
Well, look, hang on in there in Wyoming. And, I hope you get some ammunition. Even if you buy some and you haven't got a gun, you can throw it at people.
Oh, I can do that, yeah.
And I've been loving the photos you've been putting up of the animals that go past your front door at night because you've got a bit of a camera up there. And I didn't know they had dolphins in Wyoming. That's great.
Oh, of course we have dolphins. Yeah, we have all kinds of things like that.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing on your porch, but that's great. Dr. Rachael Dunlop, thank you for chatting to us here on the Skeptic Zone. And I'll go back to cowering in place.
Okay, you do that, Maynard.
I think we need to think. Here's Susan Gerbic.
Hello, Skeptic Zone listeners. This is Susan Gerbic speaking to you from Salinas, California. Richard asked if I would give him a few minutes of what it's like to be living in stay-at-home California and, what it's like over here going through the COVID-19 lockdown. And here in California, I'm very near San Jose area, which is kind of the middle of California on the coast. And we were locked down right around the 15th of March. asked to stay home and practice social distancing. And so California actually looks like it's faring really well. I just listened to the news, and we have a couple hundred deaths. As sad as that is, it's nothing like what's happening in New York City with 4,000 plus deaths. They say we're going to hit our peak around the beginning of May. So, it's people are staying home. My neighborhood is really well established, and the neighbors are really looking out for each other. We've started up a text chain where if anybody needs something, they text around and see if somebody has something. If you have a suggestion or if they have something they need done or something like that. It's just a way of keeping in contact with each other. And that's been really great. Our grocery stores are starting to get toilet paper and food back in that we've been missing for the last couple weeks. The weather here is amazing. My garden is in full bloom. It's so beautiful. We've had a little bit of rain and then like 5 days of sunshine and then a little bit of rain. So the weather is incredible. And once people want to get outside, and that's fine because I just heard Monterey County beaches, which is just 20 minutes or so away from me, they're opening them back up because people have been really responsible in practicing their social distancing. And it's a good exercise to get out and walk along the beach. And it's not warm enough weather to go and be in the waves. So it's not like what's has been happening in Florida, where you have people, playing volleyball and rolling around in the sand together and, strangers interacting with each other or anything like that. It's more like you put your jacket on and you walk along the beach. So that's great that's opening up again. We have been having lots of Zoom or Skype calls with people. Even our neighborhood genealogy class, I've been going to that for about a year. There's about 5 of us, and we've been doing our genealogy because one of my neighbors is really, really an expert on it. So that's been kind of fun. One of the things that's been happening here is, as I said, people are taking a lot of walks around the neighborhood. It's, walking their dogs. I didn't know we had that many dogs in our neighborhood, but apparently we do. But I've been going for about a 3-mile walk every day, which is just loops around the neighborhood. One of the things we've been seeing is, and people are encouraged to do, is to put stuffed animals or something interesting in your window. Especially, they've been doing a lot of bears. And the suggestion was for children who are walking in the neighborhood with their parents to be able to do bear spotting. And so that they can go along and try to find the stuffed animals as they go and make it interesting. And I did. I have a teddy bear in my window too. But I went for a walk around the neighborhood and the other day just looking see what people are putting in the windows. And it is pretty fun. You see all kinds of creative things in people's windows. One of my neighbors has a big, giant, life-size James Dean poster. And that was kind of fun. And then other just random things to make you smile and, to keep the kids, from not feeling so glum from being inside. I know my cats are absolutely loving that I'm home all the time. As far as GSoW is going, we have been really spending a lot of our time just trying to get the training revamped. We decided what we wanted to do was make a plea for people to join us, especially now that people seem to have a little more time because you're home, maybe to go through our training. So what I've done is I've cleaned it up a lot and removed some lessons and redundancies and made it less video and more instructions that are written, but with a lot of screenshots. So our training normally for an average person takes about 2.5 months. I think that maybe this will take another week or 2 off, just in the ability to get through the lessons themselves, and maybe even better than that, maybe even speeding it up a few weeks off normal. And we're trying to get those lessons translated into other languages. So if you're interested in joining the GSoW project, we sure would love to have you. This is a great time. We are combating so many horrible conspiracy theories and COVID-related, and vaccine especially. We've really been pushing vaccine because, we're all going to have to get vaccinated here soon. So we want to be prepared so the people are ready for that. And we've just hit 57 million page views, by the way. We're at 57.45 million page views for all the Wikipedia pages we've been doing. So find me on Facebook, send me a private message, let me know you want to go through the training, and I'll send you a pre-training so you get an idea of what it's like. And then, once you've passed that, then we'll put you into the secret cabal and get your training started. And, you can stop arguing with people on Facebook and Twitter and get down to doing some real work, some real social network distancing work that makes real differences in people's lives. So, stay strong out there. I think we're going to get through this. It is a scary time. I've never seen anything like it, and nobody else here has. And we can do this together, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Some little notes that have come my way. Skeptics in the Pub, online from the UK, The World According to Physics. That's going to be a talk on Thursday, the 9th of April, 7 p.m. I think that would be British time. And you can find out more about that by going to twitch, twitch.tv/SITP, which stands for Skeptics in the Pub. I will certainly add a link to that in this week's show notes. If you're like me and you're going to be staying home and washing your hands and not doing things like Skeptics in the Pub, which is called off anyway, join in online. Also, don't forget to tune in to the latest episode of Bunga Bunga at maynard.com.au. Now, I had a good time with the latest episode of Bunga Bunga because I was the sound engineer. It was really fun, really fun. Enjoy Bunga Bunga at maynard.com.au. Now, thank you to those people who have recently, in the last week or so, chipped into the Skeptic Zone or come on board at Patreon or PayPal to help sponsor the show. And of course I realized that many people are not in the position anymore to do things like sponsor podcasts. And if you're one of those people, we all understand. We're all in this together as we keep hearing on the TV and the radio. That's perfectly all right. But as long as you keep enjoying the Skeptic Zone, that's the important thing. But for those people who have come on board recently or have even upped their subscription, my heartfelt thanks to you all. It's so important to the show at the moment. Well, next week is show 600 of the Skeptic Zone. Normally, of course, it would be a gathering of Skeptic Zone reporters and other people here in Sydney at the club at the end of the street for a live think tank, which we did 2 years ago for show 500. But in keeping with the way the world is at the moment, that too has been postponed until, well, shall we say, better times. So next week's show will include a bit of a celebration, some messages from around the world, but more or less it's going to be a regular episode of the Skeptic Zone. But for this week, no matter where in the world you're listening to this show, and no matter what your situation, you might be tucked up in bed in a nice fluffy white dressing gown, you might be walking the dog, doing the dishes, trying to keep sane. I hope the Skeptic Zone keeps you company and keeps you entertained. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.